I'd like to ask, is the truth condition on knowledge independently logically necessary? Now, this is a big question with a lot of big words, so let's break it down. But first, we need to note that the classical definition of knowledge is that knowledge is justified true belief. Here's what this means. In order to have knowledge of a proposition, someone must assent to that proposition. She must believe it. But she can't just believe it. That proposition has to be true. But she can't just sort of accidentally come to have a true belief. Rather, she must arrive at her belief, her true belief, in the appropriate way. And this is what it means that her belief must be justified. Now, again, according to the classical picture, each of these conditions, justification, truth, and belief, which are symbolized as J, T, and B, respectively, are each independently necessary. Now, let's take the necessary piece of that first. What that means is that if you take any of these conditions away, if you take truth away, or if you take belief away, or if you take justification away, then a person would no longer have knowledge. For instance, if you took truth away, even if the justification and belief conditions were met, the person would not have knowledge. Now, what does it mean that they're independently necessary? Well, that means that each condition adds something that the others do not contain. For instance, if the truth condition is independently necessary, then if you have justification, that would not necessarily mean that you have truth. Further, if you have belief, that would not mean necessarily you have truth. The truth condition adds something that is not contained in the justification or the condition, or that is not contained in the belief condition. That is what it means to say that the truth condition on knowledge is independently necessary. But there are many forms of necessity. And so today I'm only going to look at logical necessity. And that's important for the following reason. We assume that the laws of logic are universal. This means that they apply at all places, at all times, even in all conceivable situations. Thus, if the truth condition on knowledge is independently logically necessary, that would mean that there is no even conceivable situation in which having justification would mean you have truth, or having belief would mean you have truth. There cannot be even a single conceivable instance in which the belief condition entails the truth condition, or the justification condition entails the truth condition. Well, intuitively, the fact that someone believes something does not mean that that belief is true. So, intuitively, it seems pretty safe to say that this one checks out. The belief condition does not entail the truth condition. But this one up here, it's a little bit trickier, because we pursue justification in order to get closer to truth. The more justification we have, the greater likelihood, we think, that our belief is true. So there seems to be a tighter connection between justification and truth than there is between belief and truth. So we're going to have to dig in to the question of whether there is a situation in which the justification condition entails the truth condition. And in order to do that, we're going to have to look closely at what exactly justification consists of. Now, there are a wide variety of answers to that question, but today I'm only going to look at one of them. And this is the answer that is associated with the theory called reliabilism. Now, this is a very generic definition of reliabilism that I'm drawing from Roderick Chisholm in his article, The Indispensability of Internal Justification. And I've modified it a little bit to meet our needs and be a little bit more clear. But the basic idea of reliabilism is that a person is justified in believing a proposition if the way in which the person was led to believe that proposition is reliable. Now, of course, the immediate question that springs to mind is, if the way in which a person is led to believe a proposition must be reliable, well, how reliable? Is 50% reliable good enough? Well, it seems that that must not be the case, because after all, if a way in which you're forming a belief is only 50% reliable, then you're just as likely to have a true belief as to have a false belief. So you really just got kind of lucky. Well, okay then. Is 75% good enough? How about 80%? I mean, even with those, there's still a decent likelihood that the belief could be false, even though it is justified. Well, the question of exactly how reliable a way of forming a belief must be in order to satisfy the reliabilistic conception of justification is one that is very hard to answer. But that's actually okay. That doesn't stop us from addressing our question. There are two important things to know. One, reliability can be expressed as a percent of the total beliefs produced by a way of forming beliefs. What percentage are true? That percentage will be the percentage reliability of that way of forming beliefs. Secondly, because reliability can be expressed as a percentage, it is logically possible, it is conceivable for a way of forming beliefs to be 100% reliable. That is, for all the beliefs formed by that way of forming beliefs to be true. Now, this is a very important observation, and it's intuitively backed up by our intuition that it is possible for a belief-forming process to be 100% reliable, even as it is possible for a machine to be 100% reliable. But because it's so important, I'd like to consider just an illustration of a type of belief-forming process that might be 100% reliable. So there is a logical operation called contraposition. And according to contraposition, you can start with the proposition, if A then B, and then by a two-step process, derive a logically equivalent proposition. The first step is to flip the terms, right? B comes there, A goes there. And then the second step is to negate both terms. Now, if this process is followed correctly, it will always yield a logically equivalent proposition. It will, thus, if you follow this process properly, you will always arrive at a true belief about whether these two propositions are logically equivalent. You will arrive at the true belief that they are, in fact, logically equivalent. So it is both conceivable, kind of abstractly, that, and it is also sort of borne up by this example, although there are some nuances which we won't be able to get into that have bearing on this example, that a belief-forming process can be 100% reliable. So let's remember that the classical definition of knowledge is JTB. And here, let's take this J to be the sort of generic reliabilistic form of justification, okay? And then let's symbolize the type of justification that is 100% reliable as J prime, all right? Now let's note that if we have just a regularly justified belief, we can't really infer anything from that. For instance, it doesn't follow that we have a justified true belief. It's just we can't be certain that a belief is true, even though it is regularly justified. This inference does not work. However, if we have J prime justification for a belief, then it does follow that that belief is true. From the definition of J prime justification, we can infer that any belief which enjoys it is in fact true. Now here's the crucial point. Under reliabilism, it is logically possible for a belief to have J prime justification. Thus, under reliabilism, it is logically possible for the justification condition to entail the truth condition. Because this is the case, it is not the case under reliabilism that the truth condition on knowledge is independently logically necessary. Thus, to answer our question, is the truth condition on knowledge independently logically necessary? Well, we haven't answered that question in and of itself. There are many other forms of justification to which this argument would not apply. But as far as reliabilism goes, it does seem that the answer is no. The truth condition on knowledge is not independently logically necessary.